Ladies and gentlemen, it's that time you've all been waiting for. So grab a hold of your pocket protectors and join us for Nerd World!
Hello, everybody. Nerd World, what do you know? I'm going to bring my fellow hosts on. There's Colin. Colin, good day. JS, Mr.
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you, buddy. Mr. JS Gilbert, if you can unmute yourself if you're on video. We'll have the whole gang here. Very excited.
Yes.
What was
Long
the day?
time.
What was the last day we did Nerd World?
That was the Vegas Nerd World.
Office, a little over before the pandemic. I think
Was it 19 or 18? Had to be 19?
2019.
Summer of 19, because it was so hot in my office that the air conditioning broke.
It was 119 degrees in your office when we were doing this thing.
And we had to move from the studio into the conference room an hour before the show, but we were able to launch it. Welcome, everybody. We're very excited.
Yeah, Nazim Beltran, right here. Nazim.
So
it doesn't matter that it's like 3 o'clock in the morning his time. He is here supporting us.
He doesn't know anything about government anyways, does he?
Yeah.
So
he certainly doesn't care about U.S. government.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
We've been talking about government and what a cluster it is. And I have a suggestion on what I call Government 2.0, which I'm going to share shortly. But I'm very excited to share this topic of government and how we can do better and what's not working and what's working from a technology standpoint. So we started working on this a couple of weeks ago. Today's not about fancy production. That's what we do at our day gigs. Today's about a fun conversation with some special guests. In fact, where's our first female special guest? If you could pop in and say hello to everybody. Some of the audience may know this person who has been with Nerd World. I think Nerd World started in 2003. The original episodes. There she is, Angel. Welcome to the show.
Hi, guys.
I need a soundboard. I need applause.
It's always important when talking about U.S. government to have a token Canadian. So welcome aboard.
Exactly.
What's a U.S. government show without a Canadian on board?
She's the prettiest one here, Colin. So we had to have.
Well, that's true.
But that's not what you were saying last night, John.
Yeah, buddy.
I tell you.
Trebek.
Fickle man you are.
Well, Angel's going to be with us in and out of the show. I wanted to introduce her. As you recall, she used to pop in and out of Nerd World from time to time and bring us interesting information and have all kinds of special graphics on her background there. So we're pleased and honored to have you. We will be doing more Nerd Worlds now that the pandemic's over, and we can get back to normal life. So thank you for coming. And I will be in touch to pop you in and out. Or if you have something funny to add to a conversation, feel free to pop in.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, Angel. Okay, Colin, we have kind of a rough agenda here. It's got all kinds of topics. In fact, we had to remove some stuff because we could talk for 5 hours about government.
Yeah, we had to ditch all the fun stuff. So.
And somewhere, here's my document. So if you guys have been frustrated about government like I have for the past 15, 20 years, immediately, hey, Mr. Lombardo.
Hi, fellas.
How are you, buddy?
Hey.
Good. Thanks for inviting me. Oops, knocked that over.
John's one of our special guests here, and he has his own podcast that he talks about government items. I am just giving a preamble here about this show, and we're happy to have you. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
What's the name of the show? Take a Stand or something stand? Or did you change the name?
It's the show's called The Antidote.
Oh, see, you did change the name.
I did change the name. The show used to be called Common Ground.
Common Ground.
And once I realized that there is very little common ground these days, we changed the name to The Antidote. So,
gotcha. Okay, so I'm going to preamble this conversation. I don't know how long this is going to go. We have 3 or 4 special guests that we're going to bring in from time to time. So, Johnny, if you could mute your video for this second, and I'll bring you in. I will summon you in. Thank you. So I wrote a blog post on, remember that site called MySpace, Colin?
I vaguely, yeah. Let's see. It got sold to Fox. Then it got sold for that was for like, I don't know.
Just going to say, Tom is no friend of mine.
He was a friend of mine.
He said he was a friend of mine. Did he help me move? No. Did he come to any of my parties? No. What kind of friend is that?
He was too busy on his whiteboard,
I guess,
drawing interesting things. So I wrote a couple of interesting blog posts. This particular blog post was entitled Government 2.0. Because
when was this written?
When was Facebook alive?
This wasn't Facebook. You mean MySpace?
Oh, MySpace.
MySpace.
2000, early 2000.
So most of the people that read that blog are probably dead now. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they're probably all dead. Yeah. And as a technologist, I can't understand why we're not using technology in government. And we've got a lot of old timers that won't use technology. When I tried to tell my mother I was supposed to send her the link, somebody send my mother the link to the show. Steven, send my mother the link to the show, please.
Here's the funny thing, though, John. I, in my course of doing business, I run into a lot of 24, 25, 26, 27, 28-year-olds. And I'm amazed at the large portion of this group that are not that technologically savvy.
I know. I was the only guy that did computers in my high school.
No, I'm saying today. Today.
I know. Yeah, I agree. Hey, I'm just looking at the agenda. Did you guys want to have any post-mortem on our last episode, which was the dangers of 5G?
Well, that's been my big thing. You guys, you might not know this, but I'm actually on one of the IEEE advisory boards for 6G, which we're talking about now. Yes. So here's the bottom line. Nobody really gives a shit about 5G anymore. It's all about low orbiting satellites and what's going to be happening in about 15 or 20 years from now. That's basically the post-mortem.
Those low orbiting satellites are almost a full constellation at this point. The first constellation of the SpaceX satellites went up. I think they had their last launch yesterday or the day before.
Yeah,
but he's not part of the consortium for 6G. I think he's trying to do his own thing.
He is doing his own thing, and it's working, and it's getting done. It's not going to take 10 years. Although Viasat is all pissed off about it, they're trying to hamper him in that effort. But no, you're right. It's not 6G in the official.
It is a mesh network designed to assist with the fact that 5G doesn't have large ranges.
Correct.
And needs lines of sight. So by basically being able to boost the signal up to the satellite and come back down and then use existing nodes on Earth as peer-to-peer, you can then increase speeds and both upload and download. And at least that's sort of how it was explained to me. But these people that are on the consortium,
I think they're assuming these are right. These are consortium folks. They're assuming that their specification is going to be relevant.
Oh,
and I'm beginning to think that may not be the case. I mean, if Viasat and SpaceX and whatever Blue Origin is doing become the de facto standard by the time the consortium gets their act together and funding to actually launch a bunch of satellites and a launching system, which of course they don't have access to necessarily without paying through the nose. I mean, can you imagine SpaceX choosing to launch a competing satellite system?
Well, I think like a lot of things, COVID has helped a few people out there. So because of COVID, they couldn't send people out sticking, 5G is like these tiny little antennas that you got to put everywhere.
Backpack size.
They put them on kids and trees and posts and wherever the heck they could stick these things. But because of COVID, they couldn't really do much of that. And but there's really no problem with launching satellites because I guess there's no COVID in space. I don't.
Well,
right,
there's that, but the other thing is
we're getting too far in the weeds on 5G.
Sure, but just hang on, stick with me for a second. The one thing you got to keep in mind.
I'm not here, like Alex. What are you talking about?
Well, the one thing you got to keep in mind here is that even if when you do have people out there putting up these antennas, you have other nutballs, firebombing them and telling them to take them down and attacking the workers. To which I say, no, 5G is going to help you. You can download your conspiracy videos that much faster. It's
exactly
that whole run up for that joke. Here's my one paragraph on 5G. 5G will not activate the nanobots in your vaccine. Did you get that?
No, that's a totally different technology.
That's a wholly different problem. But then again, on the bright side, when the nanobots in your vaccine are activated, you're not going to care anymore.
There you go.
Because you'll have those 30 seconds before it hits your blood-brain barrier.
I know.
And then we are Borg.
So today we attempt to fix government.
Well,
are we ready for our solutions this fast? It's only 12 minutes in. I'm ready to blow my whole load right now.
Do we have any burning questions? A lot of our old lab friends are here. Lindsay Badger.
I'm not paying attention to the chat, so
I'm looking at the chat. I can see you commented, but for some reason can't see the comment. Okay,
Lindsay, what's up,
Angel
Lindsay?
said.
And we have a lot of special guests in the wings. So I'm going to throw out my proposition for Government 2.0. While I watch TV, there's a couple of channels that I flip between: CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. I watch them all. I watch them all so I can get everybody's perspective. To me, the way to fix government, our government specifically, is to eliminate Congress completely. I can eliminate Congress completely. 90% of what I watch on all those news stations is related to Congress in some manner. There's no parties. There's no Congress. We don't need representative government. Representative government from the UK system of the Parliament, of the House of Lords and the House of Commons. I don't need to put a guy in a stagecoach and send him from San Francisco to Washington anymore. Everybody's got a phone in their hand.
No, today. You put them on the train now, John.
You put them on a train? If we eliminate Congress and keep the other two branches of government, executive and judicial, and let the people be the new Congress, everybody votes from their phone. And I know what Chris Fenwick's saying in the cheap seats right now.
So, John, you're favoring a direct democracy. Now, didn't some state try that? JS, which state was that?
Estonia, if you're hip to what's going on in Estonia.
We are a constitutional republic.
Yeah. No, I
think it's important to understand that these United States are not actually run by any politicians, even the president. We have a piece of parchment that goes back 244 whatever years, 245 years, that basically dictates how things are going to be done. So that, I think, is the crux of the problem, is that we are a constitutional republic. We are not a democracy. We could be an oligarchy at times. We might even be a feudal state at times. And some people would say a socialist republic or socialist democracy. But a lot of these things are, in my opinion, a problem of when we started, as you say, House of Lords, House of Commons, really creating a fundamental basis for these United States to be a two-party governed place.
Concur.
And my solution is to create additional viable parties, not like the ones that we have right now, the Green Party,
that's just going to cause more different TV channels instead of two. There'll be 3 and 4 and 5 different channels,
but
depending on your party.
To John's point, though, you want to create a direct democracy, right? Do away with Congress.
Okay.
Do away with
Bring
representation.
all the negatives in. I
So-
know all the negatives.
So we've seen this before.
Yes.
JS is living it in California, and it just doesn't work. You get you get ballots that are bloated with nonsense referendums.
No, you got phone in your hand.
You get laws.
You're telling me that we can't do secure voting on a phone.
Oh no, I'm not worried about the voting. Voting is a pain in the ass. We'll get to that in a minute. More importantly, we get a state that mandates that you put a little label on your table at your business that says this table has been cleaned with a cleaner that might cause cancer if you lick it.
Yeah, that's true.
This is not worthy of meaningful government, and
so
it
how
wastes
did they
everybody's
solve this?
time.
How did
So,
they
Colin,
solve this?
do we actually vote for a president, or how does that work? Because that would be a
Here we
democracy.
go.
We vote for people that vote for president.
Yeah, maybe we should just get rid of them.
That might be useful. And I guarantee you there are a lot of Democrats out there who feel very strongly about that, and a lot of Republicans who feel very strongly the other way.
Do you know what is it? Gartner, the people who do the polls.
Gartner Group.
Yeah, they did one in 2018. 2/3 of Americans favor having a three-party or more system.
What's the number? 3/4?
2/3.
2/3. Okay.
The other third are probably just taking super heavy doses of drugs. No, I'm kidding. There's no black or white here. That's obviously why we're having this discussion.
Well, so how does one establish a viable third party? I mean, plenty of people have tried establishing third parties, and they've been unsuccessful in meaningful ways.
Well, let me tell you what's going on right now with the Republicans and their allegiance to Trump. This goes back, I think, in parallels what happened in 1912. So Roosevelt was Taft's mentor, if you will. And when Taft got to become president, when he was the incumbent president, he wasn't doing things that Roosevelt liked. So Roosevelt decided he would run against him for the party nomination. Now, back in those days, it was kind of interesting because the presidents and vice presidents ran on separate tickets. So you could have a Republican president, a Democratic vice president, and so forth. What wound up happening was Roosevelt lost, and he took his allegiance of the Republican Party with him, and he started the Progressive Party, which was also known as the Bull Moose Party. And so when the election came, Roosevelt won 27.4% of the election. Taft got 23.2%. It was the first time that any independent party presidential candidate got a larger section of the voting than the existing two parties. But it did a very strange thing. It caused the Democratic nominee, Woodrow Wilson, who got 41.8% of the popular vote and the vast majority of the electoral vote, he became president. So essentially, this action that Roosevelt did, as opposed to, say, just backing Taft, swung the whole scenario from the Republicans invariably getting Taft reelected to getting a Democratic president. And so we see this today. Why are Republicans so loyal to Trump? Their fear is that Trump will just create the Trump party, splitting the Republican Party perhaps as much in half, and then, of course, giving a lot of power to the Democrats.
Yeah. Well, the Dems have had this. The Dems have had this issue for perennially for years. Usually focusing on the Green Party because they seem to field the most viable candidates, third-party candidates. The assumption there is that they'll always split the Democratic vote, and so now the Republicans are having that same experience, which is not a bad thing because realistically, share the pain, right?
Yeah. So the way a third party would come to be, of course, we're looking at all things not being equal. We have gerrymandering, we have super PACs, we have all this kind of crazy stuff going on. Remember those two guys that were running for president, Democratic nomination for president, the two really rich guys?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't either. Nobody does. But what we remember is that they spent like $500 million.
Bloomberg. Yes, he did.
Yeah, Bloomberg and whatever. Who cares who they are, really? We don't. But what we could say is if that $500 million went into a kitty, along with a lot of other big dollar donors, to try and create some sort of party that would dip into the Republicans and dip into the Democrats, perhaps alike. So the point here is that we have the two parties, and we used to do a little of this, but now it's like that. And so you need somebody in the middle to kind of do allegiances with the Republicans and the Democrats, and that's where it starts
I
happening.
know what to do. Canadians are really polite and grateful, so you need a Canadian. And if you want to get the job done right, you hire a woman. So just hire a Canadian woman to come and assist, and you'll be able to get the job done.
Good
Just saying.
answer.
Well,
Good answer.
we tried to.
That's what Angel does.
We,
She
we,
pops
we
in
tried
and
to we tried to elect a Mexican president, right? Mitt Romney, right? We tried to elect.
wasn't
Where
really
did they say
Mexican.
Obama was supposed to be from? I can't remember.
Africa.
Oh,
Wherever,
he was
you
from
know. But
Kenya or
clearly
something,
we
yeah.
just need a Canadian president, and we'll be fine.
I would like to welcome to the stage a current and active presidential candidate for 2024, Mr. Lars Mapstead. I need my audio.
Thanks, Tom.
I'm going to be a cheerleader right now.
Yay.
Tell everybody who you are and what you're doing, Lars.
Yeah, so I'm Lars Mapstead, and I am running for president in 2024 for the Libertarian Party. I'm seeking the nomination from the Libertarian Party. And, you know, in a lot of ways, what you were talking about, I'm JS. I don't know your first name. JS.
It is my first name.
That is your first name,
Yeah.
JS. So, I mean, libertarians are the most viable third party that there is right now because they're the only third party that is been consistently on all 50 ballots in all 50 states. And that's, you know, definitely something that you need to do. And, you know, in a lot of ways, the Libertarian Party crosses boundaries and takes some from ideas from the right and some ideas from the left, and introduces obviously its own ideas as well. So I think we do have a viable party, a viable alternative to the other parties that run, but the two-party system colludes together to basically keep out any and all other comers.
Yes.
The Libertarian Party has to struggle every election cycle just to be on the ballots in all 50 states. And the two parties, since they basically control the government, they collude together to create rules and laws to basically keep out any other voices.
So I say get rid of all parties and all Congress. JS says add additional parties. Are you along that same line, Lars?
I think we need more voices. We need more thought processes than just the the two parties basically butting heads. Like we were talking about earlier, there's 1,500 people running for president last election cycle, and I'm sure that out of those 1,500 people, there was somebody that's better than the person that's currently sitting in office. That would have done a better
that's the thing.
job.
There are always people who are better, and those people who are better are not likely to run because they're smarter. They know
That's right.
better.
That's true.
Well, here's another problem. People think 50% of Americans are in favor of Republicans and 50% are in favor of Democrats. It's not even close. We have most people seem to, there were more people actually that are signing up to vote as independents over the last 7 years than we've ever had before. It's a huge number. And my question about, say, libertarians or the Green Party is if you have Republicans here and you have Democrats here, is the Green Party kind of pushing like that? And is the libertarian sort of pushing like that? Because I don't really see any viable group that's working on a scenario of treating both parties as though they have viable ideas and willing to actually support or reach both parties. I don't
Is
know
the
if I
Green Party
explained
those
that.
guys flying those things that the Navy can't figure out what's flying around in the ocean?
No.
Is that the Green
Oh,
Party?
dang! I forgot to put on my my thing, my space hat.
We
I know I
all need
left
our
one.
tinfoil
There's,
hats. Yes.
there's one on the shelf behind you, right?
There is one right there, sitting on the wall. Lars, we're very excited to have you. Feel
Yeah.
free to pop in and out anytime during the conversation to add.
Okay.
To
Well,
the
I would
conversation.
like, Lars, how
Yeah.
does the Libertarian Party then look at, say, addressing more of the less conservative needs of the Republican Party, and of course, any of the Democratic desires or needs? How does, if you could just say what you would do as president to kind of deal with that?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I describe myself to people, you know, I'm fiscally responsible and I'm socially open, is kind of how I describe myself to people. And so, you know, there's a lot of things I dislike about the GOP and a lot of things I dislike about the Democrats. And there's some things that I agree with on both sides too. So it's you know, it's basically my belief system is leave people alone. Don't involve yourself. Government shouldn't involve itself in your business.
Yeah.
You should be able to do what you want to do. And I believe in less government is better. And government has gotten completely overreaching and bloated, and it's you know, it's created its own fiefdoms where, you know, it's beholden to itself and not to the people. And so, you
And
know,
what
I
state
see.
do you live in, sir?
I live in California. I was talking when you were talking about you know, your voting thing, where you vote by phone on everything. You know, as a Californian, like Colin was saying, we have all these propositions, and the proposition system has been corrupted basically. So what the government has done is they get to a hard problem that they don't want to put, you know, they don't want to take political heat for, and they turn it into a thing, and then we all vote on it. But the thing is they word it in such a way that it's completely misleading to the public, and
Yes.
so and then they also bundle it together with things. So they'll front run it with something that, you know, the people would really like, and then in the actual text of the law is something completely different, and, you know, completely hose you. So, like, as a good example of that, we had Proposition 54 and 57 in California, which were basically like, they sold one of them as no one should be in prison for smoking a joint or having a joint on them, right? And I would agree with that. No one should be in prison for, you know, doing what they want to do with their own stuff. But essentially what it did was it gutted the criminal justice system, and it made it okay to steal anything you want as long as it's not over $900. Theft has become completely rampant in California. The justice system is basically a joke at this point. You know, they let out all kinds of criminals that were hardened, violent criminals that weren't, you know, I don't believe that people should go to jail if there's no victim. If the victim of this crime is basically not crime, in my opinion. You know, like if you don't pay your parking meter, you shouldn't go to jail, you know, kind of a thing. It's just, there's no.
It is always in that regard is because we're nerds, is hacking and extortion related to hacking a victimless crime?
I think hacking is form of trespassing,
Yep.
and there's a victim.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I
Fair
have a
enough.
question for the panel, Lars and Colin, John, and Angel, if you're around. Anybody who wants to chime in.
Well, Mr. Lombardo, I'm sure, could add.
But I have a question. So in 2016, the Washington Post ran an article after doing, this was another poll that was conducted. I forget who did it, but it determined that over half of Americans were incapable of taking care of a $400 unexpected debt, whether it was a medical debt or wrecking a car or something, without having to borrow the money or put it on a credit card or something like that, which is a very strange place for Americans to be. We think of ourselves as prepared and wealthy and so on and so forth. Is there a political solution to this problem? What fixes this problem? Even now, in the wake of hearing how AI and robotics are putting more and more people out of work.
Oh, I love this question. It's such a good one.
Well, I assume you're leading towards basic income.
Yeah, me too.
Which I don't know if that's a good thing necessarily, and to me that just increases inflation. Now, if you can keep the GDP high enough to minimize that inflation through, as you say, automation of production and so on, then you might be able to pull it off. But it requires a constant increase in GDP to mitigate that, and I don't know if that's feasible. Anybody?
Isn't that really the big question that we're having today? Like, isn't that really the big global question at the end of the day? Isn't that really the question of like fixing the government? Because at the core of it, at the end of the day, if we can fix that problem, then we can cascadedly fix all the other problems. If everybody had basic shelter, basic livable income, then we could fix all the other problems. To me, at the core principle, the real solution is really in the mastermind principle. It's really in things like, it's going to sound super basic. Okay. I'm really, this is going to sound like I'm almost dumbing it down when I say this, but it goes back to the mastermind principles of Think and Grow Rich. And that's why infrastructure works, because when we can all focus on a mutual goal, then we start working. So maybe not global livable income in sense of leaving everybody at home getting income, but if we could be working towards a mutual goal or a mutual purpose where people were getting a resource in return for it and they weren't starving, we'd have to find some purpose, some, not where they were just getting money. So there would have to be a resource exchange where people had... So
we briefly explored direct democracy. Let's look at, to your point, let's look at a system with a heavy duty social safety net. So for our purposes, socialism. A socialist system hasn't worked historically, except maybe in Norway, Sweden, maybe. But what do these countries have in common? They don't have.
Sweden has a lot of hot chicks.
Well, this is true. I can't argue that point, but more importantly, they don't have restrictions on resources. They have resources well beyond their requirements. So there's no challenge in distributing those resources. And when you have no challenge in distributing resources, a socialist system can work. A social safety net, an extremely robust social safety net, can work.
Do you think Americans have the mindset, though, that would allow for something like that? I think when I talk to people in other parts of the world,
market economies don't engender that mindset.
JS, if I could make a comment on that, I think that this generation of Americans does not have that mindset, but I think there is a new generation of Americans who will very much have that mindset. And I really, my take on what you're talking about, I feel the same way that you do, Angel, like it's almost oversimplified to say it, but I once was discussing sexuality with a Buddhist monk, and he said sexuality is a fire that burns inside of you, and if it's controlled, it'll warm your home. And if it's left out of control, it'll burn it down. And I think that's what's happened with capitalism in the United States of America.
Well, theoretically, that's true of everything. If you eat 2 eggs in the morning, you're empowering yourself. If you ate 50 eggs in the morning, you're killing yourself. The same thing.
Yeah, it's true. So what's happened with capitalism is we've allowed it to permeate every aspect of our lives. It's in education, it's in medical care, it's in everything. And I'm sorry, it doesn't work very well in a lot of places. It works great in some places. It hasn't worked for us. One of the reasons we're talking about a universal basic income is because no one can afford to live anymore. They can't afford houses, they can't afford education, they can't afford health care. We've allowed it to grow exponentially in what's supposed to be a free market, but it is not. And so that part has not worked. There's some places we don't want to touch capitalism. We want to let it run rampant and be what it is, be itself. But in some places, it's the bull in the china closet.
And I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that's true, though. I mean,
I'm not so sure it's true either.
Right. Universal basic income as a concept is embraced by people who feel underempowered, shall we say.
Yeah.
But the economic argument for it is, as I suggested, around the increase in production efficiency and the increase in GDP, independent of the productiveness of the workforce. So where you've automated a workforce and you can continue to produce at the levels you need to produce. So that makes universal income viable. But is it more viable as a policy because people feel stepped upon, or is it more viable as a policy because it's economically feasible given the constructs of production and distribution?
Well, what I'm saying is not to have anything to do with universal basic income. I'm not advocating for it or against it.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying that the rampant nature of American capitalism is what has us considering that. It's rampant in every field. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what we do in everything we look at. We're talking about getting rid of Congress. The reason we need to get rid of the legislative body, if John is right, is because capitalism rules it. Money rules it. It's where it does. There's the way government's supposed to work and the way it works. And the difference is that it is purchasable. It can be purchased. The legislative power can be purchased in our country. Once again, capitalism has no place there. So that's my point. I just think that we've allowed it to run rampant everywhere.
Okay. Well,
so I've got another question for the panel, which I think goes along with this. When you kind of look at things sort of structurally in this country, there seems to be a turning point right after World War II, where the wealthy and the large corporations in this country very much subsidized the development of the middle class. We had the GI Bill, we had subsidized housing and jobs and so on and so forth. Then as we moved along through the Reagan and Bush years and so forth, we saw more and more tax cuts and incentives for the wealthy. And we saw now the middle class, who were striving to become upper middle class or rich, now started to become the ones who had the burden in many cases for taking care of the poor in this country, which leads us to a weird situation. In 1975, the average CEO in the United States made 42 times the amount of their worker. That number has now skyrocketed 380 times. We have 50 of the largest corporations in the United States who essentially pay no taxes at all. Just curious, it seems to me like if we remedied that, we might have a lot of money to be able to take care of some of the problems that we have. But not everybody feels the way I do. So I'm curious what you guys have to say.
Well, I find myself thinking that I was being the most liberal person here, but clearly not, suggesting that
why do you say that? What makes you say that you're not?
Because
Lars.
Historically in this group, I have been the more liberal person. To your point earlier, my argument for or against universal basic income is not that inflation has priced people out of the market, because universal basic income will increase inflation mathematically, but that the market is structured such that it can accommodate universal basic income. But to JS's point, I don't know that it's it's CEO income that's the underlying problem here. You're right that corporations subsidized the growth in the economy, but they did that by funding basic research. And you don't see corporations funding basic research anymore. Up until, well, Google, really. I mean, they started, funding AI research and so on, but it's still very targeted research. You don't see the basic research that was done at Xerox Park and these sorts of facilities anymore. It just doesn't exist, and that's a fundamental problem with market economies. They discourage this kind of generalized forward moving development economy wide.
I wanted to address one of Lars's challenges, which is the same one that I have, which is the referendums on the ballot, right? And they send you your book a couple of weeks ahead of time, whatever it is, and you read those and you can't understand them.
Voting no means you don't vote yes, but you sort of voting no, but maybe, or something like that.
If I voted on my phone or my computer, because it knows everything about me, it could draw me a graph of exactly if I said yes or no, and I could quickly see the repercussions of me voting yes or no. That's a technology.
It's like the old days when you belonged to a union and they just handed you this thing and said, here's how you vote. And you just...
Well, that's the parties, right? A lot of people just check the box that says vote party line. They don't even, some states allow you to just literally check a box that says vote Democrat or vote Republican, and you don't even look at it or think about any of the other stuff on the ballot. You just vote along the party line. And that's, the thing is too, John, with your idea is that most people aren't that interested in the minutia of politics and governance, right? So you're going to get some, you're going to get only people that are super nerdy about it get, voting on your idea. I think that's why the founders, said that we needed to have this representative government to kind of have people that were doing it all the time. It's kind of like having a stockbroker. You can certainly trade yourself, but if you have somebody that's like spending every waking moment thinking,
yeah, those guys are done too, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't go down that road. I wanted to address universal basic income. Recently I went to dinner, pick up some dinner at an Italian food place, and they said that they were running really slow and behind because no one was showing up to work. They couldn't get any wait staff. They couldn't get any cook help. And then recently I saw another post on Facebook, a guy in Atlanta that I know, he went to a restaurant and he had an hour and 45-minute wait. And it wasn't because the restaurant was full. It was because there was no workers working. Mm-hmm. And what I realized about right when I saw that post about universal basic income is that it's a minimum wage basically that you get to decide whether you're going to stay home or go to work, because somebody has to offer you more money than that in order to get you to go to work. And so the low paying jobs right now would, they would have to raise their the amount of money that they're paying dramatically, which to Colin's point is basically just raises inflation dramatically. And you really don't get anywhere.
I think the goal would be to automate all of those.
That's right. Colin and I are creating a new business to have drone waiters.
Yeah, if you can launch food at somebody, one, they'll get the food faster, and two, they'll leave faster.
Exactly. Plus, if you get enough on them, they have leftovers.
Well, that's not a problem for us because the beard works very well in that regard. But, for those without beards, it's important to have, a smattering of leftovers. Yeah.
I wanted to get back also to JS's point about taxation and the general talk about capitalism. I for a long time, if you look at like Ireland, they basically got rid of a lot of their corporate taxation and were able to draw a lot of capital from around the world, including companies from America.
Dubai did the same thing.
Who took up residence in those countries in order to get out of taxation. We live in a global economy, and so
Ireland's also doing really well because of Brexit, so don't forget about that.
Yeah, but they've been attracting capital for 15 or 20 years now, and I suggest that we should get rid of corporate taxation altogether in America. That we should find other ways of raising revenues, and that we don't have an income problem right now. We have a spending problem. I hear a lot of people arguing that we should tax people more, we should tax the rich more, we should tax corporations more. And I argue that we need to reduce government, give people their money back, and let them spend it how they'd like to spend it.
Supposing that you reduce government by, I'm picking an arbitrary number, by half, you still need to maintain a level of revenue. What are your proposals for generating revenue?
Yeah. So I don't, obviously I'm not anarchy, I'm not about anarchy. We need government. I think what the issue is that, we all know about the $700 hammers and the, $500 toilet seats and whatever the stories we've all heard over the years.
Why do you got to make fun of my hammer business?
Yeah. And if you have a budget in a government office, you are basically required to spend that amount of money just so that you get that budget handed to you again next year. And if you don't, you're basically reducing your own power by not spending your budget. So we need to look at reducing the spend of America, not necessarily reducing the services that it provides, but just reducing the bloat and the overhead, the extra administrators that we don't necessarily need, government organizations that...
If Amazon.com ran the DMV, how fast could you get a license?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But then again, how could you get smart people like JS and myself to join government if we don't have gold toilet seats to sit on? I don't know.
Well, John Pretto says he's going to take my brain and upload it to some sort of device.
I like it.
And then I can do whatever I need to do.
Hey, Lars, I have a question for you, and it's not. I don't mean this like in it. I'm genuinely I'm genuinely asking the question. What do you think that we should do about? You talked about the $700 hammers, and that is problematic. Of course, I totally agree with you.
I have one.
Does it work better? So, Lars, what do you think we should do? Not only about the $700 hammer, but the $150,000 education, and the $3 million home, and the $50,000 medical bill if you break a leg? And what do you think we ought to do about those things?
Well, a lot of those things would fix themselves if government would get out of the way, right? Government picks winners and losers and inflates the cost of a lot of those things due to regulation and that sort of thing. I think we could, I'm more in favor of letting capitalism work more, not less. I feel like the government gets in the way a lot of times, and obviously we need protections. We need like food safety, there's certain, drug safety, but at the same time, let's take drugs as an example. So there's a lot of countries where if you're sick and you want to take a drug, you can try experimental drugs to save your life, and maybe they're bad, maybe they kill you, maybe they don't. America doesn't allow you to do that. It's outlawed. It's illegal to do that. It's legal for doctors to prescribe it to you. It's illegal for you to even try those things. And so I see like you want to have drugs. The government says the FDA says this is good stuff. You should do this. Fine, we'll still have all that, right? But at the same time, let's have a not regulated market that if you as a person want to choose to do something that may or may not work for you, you should be able to do it. The government shouldn't be in the way of telling you that you can or can't do that. Like marijuana, for instance. If you feel like marijuana helps you, get rid of your cancer stuff, the government shouldn't be in the way to say you can't smoke marijuana because it's not regulated by the FDA or whatever it is. No, you should just be able to do it as long as it's not harming other people, right? And it's the same thing with, food. It's like, if I want to bake a pie and sell it on the street, I should be able to do that. I shouldn't have to get a permit from the government to do that. And with the knowledge that I'm not regulated by the FDA again, right? But I should be able to do that. Or there's just so many areas where the government has gotten in and regulated things that just really don't need to be regulated, and makes criminal activity out of things that shouldn't be criminal, basically.
Yeah, prohibition has never done anything except create criminal enterprise. It's true.
Exactly.
Well, and it also created a lot of subterranean passageways in Chicago, which is really nice. And I want to recognize all our viewers. Thank you. I think me and Angel are the only ones that see the comments here. So I should just mention that our good friend Sid had a great idea. He says a national bake sale, which he's also one of two people has requested Colin take off his shirt. I'm not sure what that was about. So
who was the other person?
I don't know. I lost the.
Caggiano.
Oh God! All right. Well.
So here's another thing. I'm not sure if Nevada actually did this during the 2020 primaries, but I know that New York has adopted it, Maine, and a few other places. It's a ranked choice voting. For those listening, ranked choice voting is an electoral system that allows people to vote for multiple candidates in order of preference. Instead of just choosing who you want to win, you fill out the ballot saying who is your first choice, second choice, or third choice.
Utah has that for Weiss.
Yeah, for each position. And this is gaining some popularity. So the candidate with the majority, more than 50% of first choice votes, wins outright. If nobody gets 50%, then it does a whole different kind of algorithm or whatever. But point being, ranked choice voting, pro, con, benefits.
Well, my understanding of the political argument against it is it makes the process more challenging for each of the candidates, and less definitive in terms of polling and that sort of thing. So they get less direction during their campaign. Lars, you might have some more input in that. But
yeah,
we do not do that in Nevada, by the way.
Yeah, there's a lot of cities in California, counties in California adopted ranked choice voting. I'm attempting to get ranked choice voting in my county. I'm a big fan of it. There are some drawbacks to ranked choice voting. There's some cons to it as well. I think obviously I'm in favor of third parties, and ranked choice voting definitely helps allow other people to rise to the top. And I think that the two-party system definitely does not like ranked choice voting because of that fact. And so, yeah, I like it. There's I also like that kind of goes along with this is that most states, all states except two, are winner take all states, where essentially if as soon as 51% of the people have voted for one particular person, 100% of the electoral vote goes to that person in the presidential race. Maine and Nebraska now split that up in their congressional districts. So you can win one electoral vote in one district and lose in another district. And I feel like that's more, that would be a better way of representing people, because people feel, outcast when their votes kind of doesn't matter. Like in California, it really doesn't matter what you vote because it's going to be a blue vote no matter what. And I think that it makes those people's vote not count at all. And I feel like it should be counted. So I'm in favor of not only ranked choice voting, but also in splitting up the vote into congressional districts.
My only concern here is that it would give Steve
Colin, can I interrupt you for just a sec?
Yeah.
Our lovely Angel Hill needs to go out to a previous engagement and wanted to say one thing before she goes. So maybe we can just 2 seconds here for Angel.
Aw, JS, I love you. Colin's so special, though. We should have given him the floor. He's calling.
I have time. We're not going anywhere.
I love you, Colin.
We'll be here till midnight, folks.
Right?
Till midnight, probably, talking about this crap.
You guys have been awesome today. I just thank you so much. This subject is really dear to home for me, because even though I personally was born in Canada, I kind of won the lottery. my brothers and sisters were all born in the US, and my dad was born in the US. So, you know, I kind of sort of am kind of quarter US. I don't know what you call me. I don't know what you call me. My heart's kind of in the US in a lot of different ways. And everything that's going on for you guys really does affect me, because it affects my brothers and sisters every day. And so it is very near and dear to me. And so the subject really hits home. So thanks for including me in this. And I feel like, you know, I feel like the US is like the big brothers of the world. You guys are like our example. It's like I'm like the little sister of the US, and you guys have been like the example to me since I was a little girl. The space race and the competitions that I watched on TV. I was always watching the Americans. They were the tank. They were always the ones, you know, and it's always been about infrastructure, and it's always been about showing us what to do. And I think the whole world is watching the US right now. And so these live streams and these conversations and the stuff that you guys are doing is a blessing. So thank you for holding this space and doing this stuff. It really matters. Thank you, Lars, for what you're doing. It really matters. Thank you to everybody that's running in these races and doing this stuff. And John for being connection points and doing this kind of stuff. I love you guys. It really matters.
Now, some of us are watching Canada, just letting you know, like I'm keeping a sharp eye on Doug Ford.
Right.
Okay.
Well, if someone has to keep a sharp eye on him, or he's going to find himself in a crack den again.
He's going to sneak across the border and try and screw up our stuff.
Angel, I feel like the big brother that the United States has been to the world lately is Chet from Weird Science.
Well, that's kind of it. And on that note, I kind of want to leave some inspiration, because maybe we can make a difference today. Because the question is, what can we do? And I don't believe it's outside of our power to really make a difference today. So let's do it. Because, you know, if I go back to Canada's difference, okay, Sir John A. Macdonald maybe didn't do it with full integrity, because he kind of built the railway using some immigrants, and there was stuff that wasn't in full integrity. Okay, so forget that part of the story. But as admare usque admare, he built the railway from sea to sea. He built infrastructure. And I think we're forgetting what infrastructure can do. And that's why I brought that up. It wasn't really about universal basic income. It was what we're forgetting about infrastructure. We're putting our eggs in the baskets of technology and capitalism and stuff. And we're kind of forgetting to be salt in the earth. And we're forgetting the mastermind principle. And we're forgetting to just be present and build. And, you know, what about trains that go across the country more quickly, that carry us farther? And what about reaching the sky again? And what about just putting ourselves on mutual goals? What about just feeding families by building something that's really cool? You know, if I'm somebody that has some money, instead of sitting on it and being a trillionaire, sorry guys, that's my alarm telling me I gotta go. Instead of being a trillionaire, why don't I take that money and pay some people? Instead of thinking about universal basic income, why don't I build something that's infrastructure based that will make my country, America, better and be a big brother and teach the rest of the planet and put some money back in people's coffers instead of keeping it. I'm talking to an individual here, but maybe I'm making a difference because I might say something to one rich person that will wake the heck up and make a difference.
We have a lot of billionaires that watch the show.
Yeah, I just, you know, I think that until every single person realizes that until everybody has basic shelter and some food in their belly, we're not done doing what we need to do.
Yeah,
we need to wake up.
Trickle down economics didn't work in the US. It might work in Canada. I don't know.
Well,
that your motto there reminds me of John Pretto and my motto of Veni Vidi Vermicelli. We came, we saw, we had the pasta.
I love it.
Hey, Angel, before you go, I just want to tell you that what you just said is one of the reasons I really agree with one of the first things you said was we need female leadership in this country. We really do. I really believe that. The reason we're so easily corralled into two parties, some of it's neurological. There's a growing body of evidence that it's tied to amygdala response, gray matter, things like that we align with these parties because of these things. And some of that has a very delicate interplay. The reason we lead the world in mass shootings is because we're a traumatized society, and feminine energy will help us move in the right direction, in my opinion.
I concur. I really
Thank you, Angel, for being our voice of reason.
Thank you, JS. Thank you, JS, for
Thanks
having
for
me,
being
John.
here.
Thank you, Colin.
Thank
I
you.
missed you guys with all of my heart and soul. I miss NerdWorld. I miss
Well, we'll do this more often. We have to.
Yes, please. I will always show up when you guys call on me. I love you. I want you guys to know I was in my masculine for too long. I'm embracing my feminine again. And this is what it's bringing me back to my mission, which is about masterminding. I am a vessel right now to get us to be more connected so that we can make planetary healing, because that's what we freaking need right now. So this is my mission. Thanks for letting me speak my truth. I love you guys.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
See ya.
Bye.
Have a good one.
That's really true. It's really true that that some of what we suffer from both globally and in our country is this really rampant ego energy, and women are less susceptible to that energy. It's true, in my opinion.
So, John,
I would.
I think we've covered most of my talking points, and I know there were things you guys wanted to specifically address.
Well, we sort of we
here.
sort of blew past John's comments on digital voting.
We also forgot to do the "What are you drinking?" thing.
Yes, and I'm the only one drinking, so.
John's having a LaCroix. I'm having a. This is a Crystal Light fruit punch, and JK's Grumpy Hard Cider.
Lars says coffee.
Coffee. And John, are you?
I get my 2-month chip next week.
Wow! Congratulations.
Yeah, nice.
I'm not visiting Vegas ever again.
Well, we'll have to coincide it with the Sausage King, so at least we could get like 50 pounds of sausage.
Yeah, well, you gotta get something out of it.
No, you're coming. Everybody's coming for
NAB.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
So
Are you coming, Colin?
I think so. Yeah.
Yes, we
Okay,
got like
so-
8 people on the list coming to
Yeah.
NAB.
John,
I'll
I
talk
wanted
you
to,
about the logistics then.
I'll
you
figure
had
it
told-
out.
You had told me about your voting idea a few months back, and I thought about it quite a bit. And what I came up with was something. So obviously, you're not going to get rid of Congress. This is not going to happen because they'd have to vote to get rid of themselves, and so that's a no-starter.
How great would that be?
So
What if I just shot them all in the head?
la la
Like
la la la
gold,
la la
like
la la la.
gold.
I don't CIA. I don't hear
I
anything. La, la, la.
don't. I have no idea what he's saying.
Yeah, so but I came up with something that I thought was kind of a hybrid on what you were talking about, and that was this, that you make an app, and the app you tell the app where you live, what your congressional district is, what your supervisors for your county is, and that sort of thing. And the app would basically list all the things that your people are going to be voting on upcoming, right? And it would like it would say, Proposition 10, whatever it is that they're voting on. And then you in the app could basically check a box that sends a message to those people that are responsible for that vote and tell them, no, I don't want you to vote for it, or yes, I do want you to vote for it. And then what it would do is it would have a tally going, an ongoing tally of the people using the app, and would give kind of a consensus of the majority of the people don't want this, or the majority of the people do want this, kind of a thing. And then when your representative voted, they would either vote for or against whatever your opinion on it was. And at the end of their time, it would tally up a thing, and it would say, your representative voted against you 75% of the time, or your representative voted with you 75% of the time. And it'll allow you an educated response to deciding whether you wanted to vote for them again or not, right? And so were they actually representing you or not? It would be much clearer, and you could put pressure on representatives to do to get through things without being so shady on it. The thing that I came up with, though, is, again, most people don't care. Most people wouldn't even use the app, because it's just only nerdy people that want to see things get done. And let's be honest, most of the time, people aren't represented by their representatives. It just is, that's the common thing. I don't think anybody is, because everybody has such different viewpoints and different ways of coming at things, where no one person could actually represent a majority of the people, I don't believe.
So let me add to that a little bit. In this regard, when eBay was first started, Sergey Brin had not Sergey Brin. What's the name of the guy that started? Pierre Omidyar started eBay, and he had to figure out a way to rate people. He didn't know a way to keep people honest, and that begat the eBay voting system up and down, right? And Gallagher used to say the same thing. He says, we don't need any police. You give everybody one of those guns with the sucker on it, with the flag on it, and as soon as you had 7 flags on your car, you got pulled over and you got a ticket, right? So using that self mechanism of upvoting and downvoting is a very good mechanism to keep the playing field even, and to know whether or not somebody's 2 standard deviations or 3 standard deviations above or below the mean, as a form of regulating like we do in statistical quality control.
So you're looking for social media style likes and dislikes to be displayed on a badge. I'm sorry, John, you are unmutual, and you may not continue to participate in society because you've got too many downvotes.
That's what Lars is doing with their representative. Are they how many standard deviations?
Yes, but they've chosen this. They're the representative that they've chosen to be your representative. You, on the other hand, generally in society, have not chosen to be judged by JS or John or Lars or me.
I don't on eBay either.
This is true, but you choose to use eBay. You can't choose to walk down the street and be judged to be unmutual.
You're forced to use eBay because there's no alternative. Now there is, but back then there wasn't. But it was a clever way of, oh, Mr. Fenwick, welcome to the show. I can hear him in the background say, that will never work.
Chris is muted.
He has to click 5 buttons to.
He can't hear me.
Now we hear you.
He's just assuming.
Are you adding to the conversation, or you just popped in to antagonize us?
No,
and show your video.
I'm adding to the conversation. Okay. Except for the fact that I don't know what the conversation is yet. So I'll just be quiet for a moment.
Well, you and Lars and JS are very close in proximity to each other. That's interesting.
John,
Lars,
go ahead.
Where are you located, Lars?
I'm Santa Cruz.
Oh, okay. I'm in Emeryville.
So, John,
Emeryville? Yeah.
The issue.
San Francisco.
The one issue that I see with any sort of digital voting and is that of having a uniform system across states, wherein yes, you can secure digital voting with various sort of blockchain type solutions wherever the vote is tracked and so on, but having a homogeneous system like that engenders hacking problems no matter how good your security is. Whereas if you have a heterogeneous system like you have across states right now, you can have some states whose voting systems get compromised and other states whose voting systems don't get compromised. And on the whole, you don't get your entire governmental system screwed over. I guess that's my primary concern.
He wants to tie in the voting with the IoT for his hue lights.
Well, first everybody has to get a Neuralink installed in their head.
So that way all the lights in his house can flash, say, this guy voted, shoot him. I don't know that that's better.
The question is, what color would the light be?
Guys, I'm sorry, I have to pop off. I appreciate you having me today. And John, I would totally be down with the cyber voting idea as long as it was handled by cyber ninjas. That's the only way I'm going.
Oh, yeah, there's a good group.
That's the only way I'm going for it.
So here's how cyber voting works, I think. You create Internet 2.0, and it is solely essentially an intranet, and everything has to go through layers of layers of layers.
Yeah, but
basically something that is a lot more unidirectional. rather
You don't
than
think voting on a
bidirectional.
phone could be more secure than something I push through a piece of paper with the punch card?
I think it individually could be, but I think on the whole, if it was a nationwide and a homogeneous nationwide system, it is as susceptible as any other system, because security is about convenience, the convenience of the user versus the inconvenience to the hacker.
And how'd they solve that with Bitcoin?
They solve that with Bitcoin to some degree, but mathematically at some point there will be a solution that decrypts Bitcoin encryption and backward and works backward through the blockchain. Mathematically, it has to happen eventually.
Yeah, well, then
it's not going to be easy.
Then you just make
there are no unpickable locks, ladies.
Then you
exactly.
just make the keys bigger.
Yeah, why not just have 50 different locks that people have to pick?
Right.
I have one primary concern, that whatever we do next, that this guy doesn't get to vote.
That's right.
I just want to make sure whatever we do next, this guy doesn't get to vote. Because I'm uncomfortable with that.
That's Gallagher's shoot the car with the red flag on it. That's what I was saying. That's how you eliminate that.
Yeah, one thing, Colin, what you were saying about voting, and it's something I've been tossing around in my head of whether there should be a national voting system or or should the states be allowed to continue doing their kind of independent hodgepodge thing. And I can kind of make arguments both ways. And I feel like for national election, presidential election, that maybe there should be a overall voting regime, but that individual states, in order to represent their constituents and their people, should continue to be allowed to set their own voting laws within each individual state.
I just wanted to quickly give a shout out to give a shout out to John's backup son JJ, who is in the audience.
Oh, JJ.
Hey JJ, how's it going, man?
Another conservative, young conservative. Which is
he was a young conservative.
I think we should do what other countries do when it comes to voting, is that on election day you vote with your thumbprint and you have ink on your thumb, and you don't get to vote a second time by accident. And that ink is going to be there for a couple of days because it's pretty severe. It might be slightly toxic. I'm okay with that. I'm also okay with certain amputees not getting a chance to vote because they don't have a thumb.
Wow.
Chris, I'm really thinking I might be changing my vote from Lars for president to you for president.
Vote by thumb. And then that way nobody gets to vote. Hey, you got ink on your finger. Get out. You've already been here. Yeah, but I'm wearing these cool Groucho Marx glasses now. I'm a totally new guy.
In 50 years from now, this is going to be silly conversation. This all be done electronically or directly in your head, and we'll laugh. It's like when we've switched from horses to cars. Horses were part of transportation for how many years? 50,000? How long?
I still prefer horses, quite frankly.
And so owning a car in 20 years from now will be like owning a horse in the turn of the century. You'll have to go to a special place like a corral to drive your muscle car, and you'll have to pay extra taxes to keep that car on the road. You own a car? Isn't that cute?
And this goes back to the argument against automation of workforces. If you automate a workforce, your low-wage workers are going to disappear. Well, if you allow cars to be deployed, what's going to happen to all of your wagon drivers?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in America, the number one job is driving. There's 5 million people that drive for a job in America. So
is that in Uber and Lyft?
In trucks and deliveries.
Mostly shipping. Yeah.
Yeah, and
the guys that drive hookers from one appointment to another.
Those too, for
Don't
sure.
Forget them.
Yeah, but they have additional skills.
So that's going to be. I mean, that's going to be huge, and definitely AI is going to make a huge swath of the population, their professions, disappear overnight. And so, That's definitely concerning. I went to Japan a number of years ago, and I was out in a little tiny village in the middle of nowhere, and there was a guy acting as a crossing guard. He was probably, I don't know, in his 60s or 70s, and he was crossing people on this 2-lane street across to where there was a lake. And I thought it was awfully strange because we were literally in a rural area, and what was this guy doing as the crossing guard in this spot? So I asked the woman who was our guide, why is that guy being a crossing guard? And she said, oh, he's a government employee. They made that job for him so that he would feel productive, and he's the crossing guard for that little spot. And we have those kind of people all over the country. So, I mean, that's sort of, I don't know that the government should be involved in setting up that kind of stuff, but it is an interesting thought.
I'm sure there are plenty of make work jobs that actually are more productive than that one could manufacture out of whole cloth, to the extent that the economy requires it.
I have a story. It goes back. Joe, who's passed away, but he was the manager of the apartment building I used to live in, and we were fairly close. He worked for the Texas government in Best, Texas, about 40 years ago. And in one room, they would take a bunch of papers and they would staple them together, put them in a folder, put them in a box, and bring them upstairs to another room where someone would take out the folder, unstaple the papers, and put a paper clip onto them. And having witnessed this for several months, Joe went up to one of the supervisors and said, I'm not sure about this procedure that we have, the stapling and then the unstapling and the paper clip. Shouldn't we look at a better way of doing that? And the supervisor said, nope, because that's the way we do things here.
If you go to Oregon and you go to pump your gas, they'll yell at you because you're not allowed to pump your own gas in Oregon.
Wow.
You have this, the government decided that they needed a lot of low income jobs. And so they made a law that said that you are not allowed as a citizen to pump your own gas, that you need the professional gas pumper guy.
And how they absorb that cost.
It's of course the same in New Jersey, except it's driven by unions. Sorry, John, what are you saying?
How'd they absorb that cost into the product, Lars?
Gas is still cheaper in Oregon than it is in California.
Yeah, it's because
they never clean the water that you wash your windows with. That's
not something Oregon gets to claim. That's California's fault.
Guys, before we move forward, one of our favorite people on the entire planet has joined in the audience. Sunday, gosh, do we love you and miss you?
Hey, Sunday, thanks for hanging out.
Sunday. Does she want to come on and talk about government?
Hey, Sunday, you want to come on and talk about government?
Sunday's one of our longtime collaborators. There's a story about Luigi. Luigi was a candlestick maker. And one day his friend came in. He said, Luigi, did you hear about this new thing? It's called electricity. He said, yeah, electricity. What are they going to do? Put wires everywhere? Colin, you should be the first one to know that you have to pivot, man. You see the future and you pivot, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Colin got knocked off, huh?
No, I think what it is, you should have played my rant because I think everybody has to go to the bathroom.
Oh, well, I had at least a slide for that. He just muted himself, so he's off screen right now.
Yeah, I did that too.
We do have a prepared rant from JS. Should we run that?
Run it.
Here we go. Play that, Chris.
American democracy has long been called the Great Experiment,
But just like this giant dysfunctional family we call the United States, it would appear that we can't even agree upon this.
Son, can you
Great
Your Honor, on
experiment
that?
is attributed to a gentleman named Tocqueville from his 1835 book written in French and later translated to Democracy in America. And while the translation of the title may be accurate, the words great experiment as used to describe early American democratic. Even Tocqueville seems to disagree with the translation even being close to the equivalent of great experiment. Thus, we have America, these United States, the brainchild of a bunch of mostly fat white men who sat around consuming copious quantities of rich food, talking about their gout mistresses and how to screw over the King of England. Fast forward to the 21st century, where despite amazing technology that promises to colonize Mars, talking virtual assistants and autonomous cars, we still use building methods that are 100 plus years old. Take that next time you run over a pothole. And we live in a two-party system where most politicians probably haven't read any books since college, let alone all the massive texts and bills that live in their inboxes. In a two-party system, especially the way the U.S. has set things up, lies, deception, and perception tend to rule. Whether you're on the side of ancient corpses whose idea of progressive is letting women into the workforce, or young whippersnappers who seem to think that we can just print money all day long and subsidize every man, woman, and child in America having avocado toast and craft beer, doesn't really matter. It's clear that no matter what side you're on, you're wrong and bad and need to up your daily ration of Prozac. Einstein said it very well after we dropped the bomb on Hiroshima. Everything about us has changed except for the way that we think. So this brings up an interesting question. What is democracy? And are we a republic or democratic or something else? Because at times it seems like we live in a socialist state. Other times it feels more oligarchical, whatever. And quite often, kind of like a feudal society. In my neck of the woods, the San Francisco Bay Area, prior to the pandemic, we had thousands of people living in cars, RVs, campers, and makeshift yurts, teepees, and wigwams. Many of these people had pretty good jobs in the tech industry, making 150 grand or more, which unfortunately isn't quite enough to get you first and last on most apartments here. But then again, when you look at America in terms of global politics, it seems to be a bit more complicated. For example, did you know that the homeless, or accommodationally challenged in America, actually have a better standard of living than 2/3 of the rest of the world? There are some places in the world where a social security check is enough to propel a person to the top 2% of society. Now, granted, these places tend not to have fresh water, food, or much of anything else. But hey, you could be one of the richest people in Burundi, or Burundi, whatever. So let's see where the confusion might lie with defining what exactly is America's political stage. There are several forms of socialist governments, for example, including democratic socialism. In democratic socialism, factors of production are under the management of an elected administration. There's also revolutionary socialism, libertarian socialism, market socialism, green socialism, and as we speak, I'm sure several other socialisms being formed and no doubt being marketed as NFTs. Now, there's also the oligarchy style of government. The modern United States has often been described as an oligarchy because economic elites and organized groups. And then there's feudalism, which was the dominant social system in medieval Europe, in which the nobility held lands from the crown in exchange for military service, and vassals were in turn tenants of the nobles, while the peasants were obliged to live on their lord's land and give them homage, labor, and a share of the produce, blah, 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 blah. Well, yeah, that looks like a possible definition for the United States. But wait, you're saying, the United States military has been an all-volunteer system since 1973. Not so fast, my friends. An act of Congress could still reinstate the draft, and of course, the government can take away your land, my land, from California to the Gulf Stream Islands. Which brings us to perhaps the crux of today's problem. Is the United States a constitutional republic or a democracy? Well, while often categorized as a democracy, the United States is more accurately defined as a constitutional federal republic. What does that mean? Constitutional refers to the fact that the government in the United States is based on a constitution, which
1
is
minute,
the
30
supreme
seconds.
law of the United States. And this, my friends, is the issue.
You should
While
be
we
switching
feel
the
that we
show,
are
son.
governed by the people, for the people, and whatever else of the people, we
You
actually
should have
really
switched the
aren't.
show.
And this goes way beyond the Electoral College. You see, the ultimate authority of the law is a legal user manual for these United States was created, and despite the fact that we are light years removed from the way of life that existed almost 250 years ago, it still rules us in almost every way, shape, and form. Sure, we've managed to sneak in a bunch of amendments, but would it be a lot better to just rip things down asunder? What would life be like if we used the blockchain to keep all things judicial, governmental, and financial under a total and complete check? What would it be like if the laws we lived, worked, struggled, and thrived under were more plastic and malleable, so as to be able to take advantage of the forward progress we strive to chart? Or is it that our lawmakers will still swim in the deep waters of their infinity pools till hell freezes over, swilling the finest of French champagnes as we struggle to figure out what the heck? On behalf of NerdWorld, John, Colin, and the rest of our guests, I'd like to thank you for tuning in and hope you'll comment and let us know how you feel about our shows. And if you have topics for an upcoming show that you'd like to see, please let us know.
Hey, guys.
All right, I was a little long in the tooth.
7 minutes.
Yeah.
Almost
but,
to the T, 7 minutes.
There were a couple of points I hope got made there. And obviously, again, we're not looking at anything that we're discussing today that has simple answers or really manageable answers. So
I don't think there's no quick answer. I think that people are set in their ways, and they're not they're resistant to change. And so I think we have a better chance of moving forward once our generation passes away.
maybe so. I just really hope I get that flying car before I kick off.
Lars is working on that.
Flying car. I want the jetpack. Flying cars. Yeah, Elon Musk will have that covered. I want a jetpack.
Let's skip all that and go straight to teleportation. Why
You can't carry too much groceries though with flying with teleportation or jetpacks.
Sure, you can just put it in the thing and just shoot your
carry infinite groceries with a jetpack with teleportation. You're limited with a jetpack.
No, because when you land, then what you'd have is you'd have like your genes will have melded with the cans and
it's great for making scrambled eggs. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, just so long as you're not teleported with a fly, it's all good.
I did like your point. I often point out too that about how the poorest Americans are among the top 8% of the richest people on the planet, just from the services that they get and from what our government provides. And we often hear about people complaining that they're not getting what they deserve, and that it was mentioned here earlier that capitalism isn't working, but I would argue that it's working perfectly because even the poorest Americans are among the richest people on the planet. If you have a refrigerator and change in your pocket, you're among the richest people on the planet.
Hey,
Robert, I'm sorry. I was going to say,
does anybody
Robert,
recognize who that is, JS? Rasbohr?
No, I don't know who Rasbohr is.
Anybody have any idea that somebody named Rasbohr?
I don't know if it's someone we know. Comment on the Facebook comments, and we'll let you in.
I don't recognize the name. That's why we have a waiting room.
Yeah. What I was going to say, Robert Cialdini, who my hero, one of my heroes, he wrote a book called Influence in 1986, and he every 7 or 8 years or whatever, he kind of revamps it. In it, he has the 6 weapons of influence, and he just added one, the 7th one, called unity, which is not being similar to other people, but being of other people. And so I see this as being a big issue that we have today, because when you look at trying to get stuff done on a global issue, the problem is whose value sets are we going to work off of? And then when you shrink it down, you say just the United States, we still have that same sort of problem. Whose value sets are we going to use as the basis for coming up with solutions? And that's where everybody gets into all the fighting and those kinds of things. And I think at one point, we had a greater good, and people kind of worked under the auspices of a greater good, and maybe could give up their egos and their own personal needs and so on and so forth. I just don't see a ton of the greater good anymore.
I'm guessing our Osborne is Randy Osborne, so I let him in.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. I think your point is certainly valid. The key example, or the key case where I see that, is where people describe the United States as broken because there is an inequity of resource distribution. No, that's the nature of a market economy. That's the nature of the system that we've chosen. You can't just arbitrarily change the value system on which a government or organization or country is to be judged, and then judge it to be flawed from the word go. That's entirely a specious argument, isn't it?
I don't know, but I know when Lars gets elected that he's nominating me as Secretary of Technology, and we're going to eliminate Congress and put in voting on phones.
Okay.
I want to be the senior assistant to the Exchequer.
I want to be the head of the Ministry of Truth.
Yeah, good luck with that one.
I want to be a lifeguard at this swimming pool.
All the positions are volunteer positions, non-paid positions.
That's how you're going to get the best people.
Yeah.
Hey,
because they're not going to be motivated by
so I have a
money,
question.
and they're not going to be
best
corruptible.
people. They will be the most bored people.
No, that's true, but they're also not going to be corruptible because they're not going to be motivated by money.
Well, that's actually comes to another point, which is term limits, right? Is that's one of the big things that I'm in favor of, is reducing the career politician.
Huge.
When the founding fathers, started up the government, people were expected to have their own jobs, and they would come to Congress, just to cast their votes and whatnot. It wasn't a full-time gig. And it kind of goes to the thing of, we've created too bloated of a government, and that's why these people have to be there all the time. And if we reduce the level of government, then we could get back to just having people come and be of service to the country instead of a paid position. And
so here's a middle ground that we hadn't investigated, and we may need to have another show.
Is it kill all the lawyers?
To look at this. Well, that's been a suggestion for many years, and it's no less valid now than it was then. No, I was going to suggest that maybe you maintain your representative system, but you manage the voting of the representatives electronically and remotely.
Well, that's kind of like Lars's deal.
That's it. But all right, I'm just trying to expand on his point, that representatives can continue to work on their own job and not be paid except some minor stipend as a representative, and contribute to society in the way they'd previously been contributing to society, and then in addition represent the people as they're expected to on their off time.
There are a lot of local city governments that are that way. Our board here and our mayor, I don't think they get more than about $6,000 a year or something like that.
Yeah, but you see that a lot of these local governments that have systems like that, where you have part-time selectmen and other, type of similar elected roles, they inevitably over a number of years decide that they're going to hire a town manager. a paid, salaried position, unelected, to run everything else.
With a capital T that rhymes with P, and that stands for pool.
Something like that.
We have that in our city, and it's a horrible mess.
We have a
city manager, and everybody hates the city manager, and it's not elected. It's not an elected position.
Right.
I found that most city managers that I've had to interact with are good people and qualified for the job and execute the job admirably.
But they can't.
But that doesn't make it a good system.
Yeah. They have to go to the board for all their tough decisions.
Which is fine, but then...
Can I ask a practical question?
Yeah.
Hey, JS, I've been checking out Amazon since your rant. Is this indeed the computer stand that you used for your rant?
Bill.
That is exactly what I used.
It seemed a little shaky and bouncy during your rant, and I was wondering if this is the computer stand you used.
No, a lot of people know I have a really bad spine. And so downstairs, I have a setup where I'm in a chair and it reclines, and I can work lying all the way back. But when I did that, the camera was going straight through my nose, and I couldn't. It was problematic. Because I try to get a lot of energy for the rant. So I kind of was like in a mid point, and I guess I didn't have that much stability.
The computer is attached to the chair also?
The camera sits on top of the monitor, and the monitor is literally floating above my head, all on a two-point axis.
Chris, how far from South San Francisco are you? 20 miles?
No, not even.
Really?
Yeah. 10 maybe.
You can drive over to JS's house and fix something up. Chris is a carpenter.
Yeah, okay.
And
I don't mean to tease you about your back. I just had to.
No, it's the damn thing cost a fortune. I mean, between that and the stupid expensive chairs. So the people at Relax the Back, when they don't see me for like a month or so, they call. Are you okay? Are you? Yeah, it's
So when it comes to term limits, here I have a couple of thoughts. One, I've always believed, not always, but for much of my adult life, believed that regardless of party, if you flipped a coin and just said the winner of this coin toss gets to absolutely run everything through the whole country unobstructed for 50 years, I think that ultimately everybody'd be probably okay. I think. I could be wrong about that. The other thing about term limits is I think that at certain levels, certainly at the president, I don't think it should be a 4-year term. I think it should be a 10-year term and no reelection. Because I think that in a 4-year term, you're spending about the first year trying to figure out where the toilet paper and where the paper towels are. You're spending about the next half year actually doing some governing, and the next 2.5 years you're actually running for office again. So you're not really doing all that much stuff. But I think that if your term was 10 unreelectable years, you could get in, figure out where the toilets are, and then just work for 9 years.
I would actually support that, believe it or not, except I would go with maybe 6 years, because I don't know how you, elected now, are going to be operating in 10 years.
Maybe in addition to a minimum age for the president of office, we have a maximum age also.
Yeah, but all of these things need to be sliding scales because medical science evolves. So that presents its own set of problems.
These things only work if we can properly fund a junta.
I have to go look that up.
Really?
What's a junta?
A junta?
Mr. Osborne, do you have anything to add to this conversation before I shut down the show? Nothing. Goose egg. Crickets. Glad to have you.
And my puppy is barking fanatically at somebody, so I need to go anyway.
I don't like government in general. I like them to leave me the fuck alone.
Agreed.
Here is the definition of junta: a military or political group that rules the country after taking power by force.
Wow. January 6th.
Can they leave me alone?
So after they take it by force, they'll leave you alone.
So what happens is they kind of have a duo purpose. You can be left alone, or you can become part of the desaparecido, which just means you go to bed, but in the morning there's nobody in your bed. We don't know what happened to you exactly. I'd like to think it's very similar to what they tell you when your dog has to be put down, and he's somewhere upstate and he's running free on a farm and doing well.
The Rainbow Connection, they call that.
Yeah. It'd be better if it was like a roller coaster you're getting on for the first time. You really don't know what's going to happen, but you have a good time.
I like your haircut, by the way, there, Randy.
Randy's in his office for the first time in 16 months.
Wow.
At least broadcasting. All right, guys. Well,
thank you to everybody who joined us.
Thanks, everybody.
And to those of you who are watching the future broadcast, I hope the future is nice.
We will have another topic soon as we figure out something interesting to talk about.
Thanks, everybody, for being here.
We'll see you guys soon.
Will John Pretto ever escape from his white hole? Will Colin Hill ever monetize his breathless pulse escape? The answers to these and even more of the universe's greatest secrets next time on NerdWorld.